You know, that's a great question. Innovation is just doing something new. Now, most of us, when we think about innovation, we think about successful innovations. We think about good innovations. But most innovations are not successful. Most of the things that, as humans, we experiment with to try to do new turn out not to work very well. And then only the successful innovations are the ones that are left.
So I think I would define innovation as very broadly as anything that's new in terms of either how we manage organizations, or certainly the products and processes that organizations produce. Management is very important for innovation because if you want to do something new, you have to give people the space and the freedom to be creative. And the irony is that, we want organizations that learn and that do different things and that innovate, but also organizations and management is very much about control. And so the irony is that we want people to do different things even as we're trying to control them. So innovation is actually a challenge in most workplaces.
Well, of course, there are different types of innovation. So some innovations are incremental, meaning they go in a predictable small step from the present to the next stage, to the next stage. And that kind of incremental innovation, that can be predicted. And for those kinds of technology changes or product changes or service changes, you can have an innovation roadmap which sets out the timing of those introductions. Another type of innovation is the more radical innovation, an innovation that changes the logic of the way we do business. And those kinds of innovations are difficult to plan because they typically take us by surprise when they come along. Most people today take for granted the internet and the smartphones and all of those technologies. But at the time those technologies were coming about, the great companies, Apple, Samsung, and so forth, they did not yet have a vision of the smartphone or of the way the internet would provide us with immediate satisfaction of our needs. Only in time did we discover that the technologies that would make up the smartphone could do the things that they do. And that kind of discovery process typically happens unexpectedly. The fact that great innovations are discovered and not planned is a problem for business leaders and government leaders. Because in positions of leadership, we want to be able to plan and predict the next wave of innovations. A better approach, better than predicting, is to lead by design. Now, what I mean by that, when we lead by design, as leaders, we don't try to predict what's next. What we do is create systems that are better at discovering. So it is the fact that we discover great innovations does not mean that they are random. Right? Great innovations are not random. Some companies, some countries are more innovative than others. And the reason for this is that some companies and some countries have the properties that are necessary for innovation to take place. I'll give you an example. Of course, everyone in Korea knows about the great steel company, POSCO. What you might not realize is that in the early days of the new Korea, so after the war, when POSCO was helping to rebuild the nation, many people felt that steel should be made in Korea with lots of labor, because way back then, labor was less expensive, technology was harder, but POSCO's leadership envisioned being a high-technology steel company. And of course, now we know they put in place the systems and structures, hired the talented engineers, and did what was necessary to create a culture of innovation. That led POSCO to have a series of important innovations, including the Finex system, which, as everyone knows, transformed steelmaking. So it wasn't as if the early founders predicted those changes. Those early leaders created the organization that innovated. And so the job of leadership is not to predict, it is to create the systems that discover.
Many organizations make decisions based upon what they've done in the past, so they carry the past into the present and then into the future. And so organizations, I think, in many instances, underutilize the available evidence from social science and the hard sciences and make decisions based on the evidence, which is how they ought to make the decisions.
The good news about large, successful companies is that they are very good at what they do. So when you look at the landscape of the great firms in the world today, the big technology firms, the big manufacturing firms, the big transportation firms, these are all companies that are very good at what they do. The bad news is that once you're really good at doing something, it's hard to realign your systems to do something else. The logic of the way your organization runs is focused on the products and services that are making money today. It is not that these companies are resisting change. These are intelligent leaders, well-educated managers. They have gone to the best business schools and the best engineering colleges. They know that change is needed. The problem is that their companies are already producing products and services that are doing very well in the market. So it doesn't make sense for them to experiment with crazy ideas that seem strange or out of step. And that's the secret to innovation for large firms. Large firms, even though they are successful, must allow for some of their people to experiment with new approaches to making products and services, even though those might not seem like a good idea at the time.
Power is very important for innovation because if change were going to happen without influence and power, it would have already. So if you're going to do something new, there are probably a bunch of individuals who are already committed to the existing order. They've made their careers on the basis of a certain set of beliefs and behaviors. They've been successful using those beliefs and behaviors. And so therefore, in order to do anything new and innovative, you're going to have to overcome the resistance of the incumbents. And so for that, you're going to need power and influence. People are ambivalent about power because power has a negative connotation for many people. It sounds like coercion, it sounds like force, which it oftentimes is, and they want the results of power. They want to succeed, they want to grow, they want to have things work out their way. But they oftentimes are a little reluctant to engage in the behaviors that are necessary to make things happen. And so the problem that this causes is that individuals are oftentimes their own biggest barriers to having power, because they say, I won't engage in networking. I won't engage in gathering resources. I want to be liked by everybody. I want to be authentic and tell everybody what's on my mind. And so they think of themselves as they need to be modest, and they need to be self-effacing, and they need to not project as much power as they have. And so in many, many ways, individuals get in their own way, and one of the reasons why they get in their own way is because they're very ambivalent. They want power, but they're kind of reluctant to do what it takes to have it. Organizational leaders should expect conflict during innovation because different people are going to think different things, they're going to have different strategies, they're going to have different preferences. So I think you want to encourage what the late Andy Grove of Intel, the co-founder of Intel, called constructive confrontation. You want people to be able and feel free to tell the truth. You want people to be able to disagree with each other without being disagreeable. You want to encourage a spirit of, openly expressing one's views based on the evidence, and then having a debate. I mean, if you think about, at least in the US, the courtroom process, the idea is the way we get to the truth is through adversarial. You have a prosecution and a defense. And through that process, and they don't take anything personally for the most part, it's just one making and one advocating one side, the other advocating the other side. And through this process of advocacy, presumably the truth emerges. So through the process of abrasion, through the process of debate, you get to better ideas and better quality innovations. So we ought to embrace disagreements and conflict. I think in many respects, Trump has been a more effective president than Obama, because Barack Obama is a person of great moral character and great intelligence and great integrity, but if you look at the end of his presidency, Democrats had lost thousands of seats in state legislatures. The Democrats had lost, the House and the Senate. And I think he did a poor job of, ironically, considering he's considered a great communicator, of having a clear, concise message of what the Democratic Party stood for. Trump, through the power of endless repetition, and by the way, there's now a study that's come out that says that if you repeat a lie often enough, people will come to believe it. And the mechanism is pretty simple. If I tell you something often enough, it feels familiar. And we tend to believe what feels familiar to us, of course. So, Trump has basically taken over the Republican Party, and the message of the Republican Party has been transformed to one of Trumpism. I mean, the Republican Party at one point stood for free trade, no more. The Republican Party once was the public of big business, no more. It's become a populist party. He has been very effective in mobilizing a lot of people and also doing something that I think Barack Obama didn't do. I have a friend who is very close to Barack Obama. He ran the Obama campaign in 2008 in California. He was the chair of California for Obama. And he was going once to the White House. And he said to me, "What advice would you have me give the president?" And I said, "Tell the president he needs to get meaner." I think one of the myths about power is that you need to hoard it. That's not true. You need to use it. There need to be consequences for people who oppose you, who get in your way. And I think in that sense, Trump has been really willing and able to steamroll people, just like the late Parks Commissioner Robert Moses, who basically built most of New York City and New York State, was able to do. In the case of Moses, it was literally steamrolling because it was construction. They would use like a bulldozer or bulldoze people. Trump, I think, is just much more forceful. And the force, while many people react negatively to it, enough people react positively to make him quite effective. A sense of urgency arises because leaders present effectively a case for what you might call the burning platform. they describe situations which in terms that make people believe that those situations require immediate and fast action. You know, the airplane's going down, the boat's on fire, you know, the enemy are about to come, whatever. Steve Jobs, by the way, was quite effective in doing that, using Microsoft or whatever as the enemy that needs to get mobilized around. And so you create a sense of that the organization's very existence is in peril, and therefore people need to collaborate and cooperate and get things going.
The sense of urgency is not automatic. It requires two things. Number one, competition. But that's not enough. You also need strategy. And strategy is the direction provided by the leader. You know, people go to work, but their jobs are typically only a small part of the big picture. Maybe someone is a file clerk who puts things in filing cabinets. Maybe somebody else works in product development on packaging, and so forth. There are many jobs in a big company. The leader's job is to help everyone in the organization see the connection between what they do and the company's success in the market. Much like a great military leader, not everyone can be the general, but the general can help everyone see how their work contributes to the success of the whole. Then, like a great military unit or like a great sports team, everyone is directed the right way to win the competition. So you need the urgency, but you also need the direction. If you don't have the direction, then you're like a soccer team with no coach. They're talented, but they're not working together, and so they cannot win. Many people think that it is better for companies to avoid competition. And I am here to tell you that that is wrong. It would be easier as a business leader if you had no competition. But think about it. Do any of us really believe that it is good to avoid competition? Think about that question. Think about your children. Do you want them to go to the easy school where there's no competition? Do you want to protect them? If your son comes home and says, I cannot play video games today because there's a big test and I have to be ready for it, that's great news. You don't say to him, oh, no, that's okay, son. I'll protect you from the competition. You go relax and play video games. No good parent would ever say that. We don't believe that. We believe that our children should learn to do well so that they can compete, so that someday when we're no longer there, they can live a good life. And then we go to work and we tell our people that the company should not compete. You don't believe that. Companies, just like people, thrive by competing. You know you have created something great when you win in competition against other companies. The best example of this, the best example on earth, are the great companies of Korea. You think about it. If Korea wanted, it could have remained a small, insignificant economy, right? In terms of size, it is not that big compared to China or Brazil or the United States or India or all these big countries. But because the leaders of government and business in Korea had the vision to compete on the world stage, they raised their sights. And that's what competition does for you. When you compete, it raises the level of your performance. Sure, it would be easier to not compete, But when you compete, it raises the level of your performance, and that improves you. That's what we think for our children, and that's true for our companies too. Now, of course, once we improve, our competitors will improve as well. And then when our competitors improve, then we have to improve. And that dynamic is Red Queen competition. Now, it is called Red Queen competition because of evolutionary theory. Evolutionary theory named that kind of competition after the Alice in Wonderland Red Queen, because she talks about how in her world you have to move just to stand still. And that's what goes on with all the great companies in the world. The best thing that ever happened to Android is iOS. The best thing that ever happened to iOS is Android, because every time there's an improvement at Apple, there's an improvement at Samsung. Every time there's an improvement at Google, there's an improvement at Apple. And that Red Queen competition makes all of us better off. I do think there is a good part of blue ocean theory. The good part of blue ocean theory is in the discovery of new markets. And that kind of discovery of new markets makes everyone better off. However, the idea that by discovering a new market, that we can keep that market protected is a dangerous idea. We want to discover a new market, and we want others to join us in that market, because the Red Queen competition that results will make that market even better. And let's take the Apple example that you raise. Apple's release of the smartphone was not intended to create a blue ocean. It was actually an innovation. It was really just an iPod that could make telephone calls, and the internet browser really didn't work, and there was no iTunes, there was no App Store. There were no apps on the initial iPhone. Not like we have now in terms of an ecosystem, no iOS. All of that was discovered later. And when that was discovered and Android entered, iOS improved. Then Android improved. And it is that competition that has made the smartphone so great, not the blue ocean.